I want to create a world in which my son is proud of what we do.
On the surface, it appears to be one of those charming little royal moments when Prince George is bestowed with this ceremonial title. Everyone nods along as the palace releases the polished statement. The pictures are flawless, and the future king naturally receives the accolade. However, it is said that Queen Camilla simply broke down behind that entire performance. Here's what makes it truly fascinating instead of merely depressing. She wasn't angry because she didn't like Prince George. She didn't feel resentment because she believed that children shouldn't be acknowledged. She was devastated because she had secretly believed for years that her own grandson, Freddie Parker Bowles, would eventually get this particular title and ceremonial distinction. And how did she discover that it wasn't taking place? She didn't have a private talk with her husband or a quiet heads-up from the palace machinery she'd spent years serving. Instead, she learned about it through the official press release, which was the same announcement that the public received. Like everyone else, she opened the notification and clearly understood the message. You can wear the crown, Camilla, but your family is still not one of us. Since this was never about a single title or a single painful snub, that's really where it gets nasty. In one cruel afternoon, years of manipulating unsaid pledges, whispered dreams, and two entirely different ideas about who belongs in this kingdom collided. Let's go back a little, because without knowing what Camilla had been working on for years, it is truly impossible to comprehend why this affected her so deeply. By no means did Camilla enter the royal family with a clean slate. Reporters continued to refer to her as the other woman. When she entered the room, as the woman accused of destroying a marriage that the entire world had been watching, they began referring to her as the home wrecker queen, a moniker intended to compress her whole life to a single unsightly scandal, and it followed her for over 10 years. That name never entirely faded, even after she transitioned from mistress to wife, from the woman the people detested to the one the palace eventually consented to tolerate. Her marriage to Charles was final by the time she was crowned queen consort. Her desire for acceptance didn't go away when she became queen, even though no one could now contest her right to stand next to him. If anything, it just altered what she wanted to be accepted, not herself this time. Camilla's first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles produced 2 children, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles. The palace had a very basic term for both of them civilians, and neither of them held a title or was employed by the company. They were accepted into family photos and cherished at Christmas, but they did not truly count as royalty, and Camilla was unable to accept that indefinitely. She wasn't done fighting for Tom Parker Bowles, Laura Lopes, and their kids, since they were her ancestors and her legacy. So she began building in silence and with caution. Nothing dramatic enough to start a fire just yet. Invitations were the first step. All of a sudden, her family started attending royal functions, to which they had never previously been invited. Then followed the meticulously timed and staged photos. People in Camilla's own group weren't foolish, and her grandson, Freddie Parker Bowles, began to show up more frequently, sitting closer to the family and approaching that royal frame. They could clearly see what she was doing. They thought she was preparing Freddie Parker Bowles to be the respectable face of her family, someone who was attractive, well-groomed, and regal enough to finally close the gap between her world and theirs. To be honest, she was also cunning about it. She never once marched in and made a direct demand for a title. No, that would have been too obvious. She let the pictures do the talking. She repeatedly allowed Freddie Parker Bowles' presence to speak for her, making it very difficult to ignore the message. My family can serve this kingdom, not just stand by it. They belong here too. She consistently mentioned Freddie Parker Bowles' accomplishments at private gatherings. She made sure his name was mentioned at charity events when the appropriate individuals were in the vicinity. She advocated for pictures of her grandkids to appear in Christmas greetings and newsletters from the palace. Perhaps small victories on their own, but year after year, she continued to pile them on top of one another. Camilla sensed her opportunity when Charles ascended to the throne. No, she exerted more pressure while remaining silent, of course. A former court advisor claims that serious discussions on granting Freddie Parker Bowles a minor hereditary title were held behind closed doors. Nothing big enough to make people yell. Perhaps a barony big enough to accomplish the one goal Camilla had reportedly been pursuing for years, but tiny enough to pass by without creating a commotion. The Parker Bowles name would be permanently forced into the official royal record. However, this is where everything became extremely violent. Camilla made her most audacious move to date one year during the royal family's customary Christmas stroll to church. In order for every camera to capture Freddie Parker Bowles standing shoulder to shoulder with the future of the monarchy, she made arrangements for him to stand precisely behind Prince George and the other members of the next generation. In actuality, that was all she required. The message would nearly write itself with only one image like that plastered every place. However, before a single shutter clicked, a senior courtier saw what was going on. Shortly before the photographer began shooting, Freddie Parker Bowles was yanked out of line and pushed all the way to the back next to domestic workers. The most bizarre aspect was that Camilla observed the entire humiliation from the other side of the courtyard. After being placed next to the future of monarchy, her own grandson was forcefully taken away and pushed to the rear as if someone had just realized he didn't belong there. And there was nothing she could do. In the midst of a royal Christmas party, what was she to do? Demand that they return him because of a scene? So she remained silent. She watched things unfold in front of everyone as she stood there. This was about belonging, the aide who saw it. Behind closed doors, Camilla was aware of exactly what people still called her. She was aware that some people would always view her as the foreign queen who managed to enter the palace, regardless of how many decades she lived inside that dynasty. She has the opportunity to finally change that narrative by bringing her own lineage into the future of the kingdom. No one could ever again regard her like a temporary foreigner once her family was inside. However, that Christmas morning revealed something Camilla was still reluctant to acknowledge. Regarding her family, the palace had already decided. Hi viewers, do you completely agree with Prince William's strict rule to protect the royal bloodline by having Camilla's grandson Freddie yanked out of the royal lineup and pushed to the back with the domestic workers, yes or no? So yet no one had taken the time to sit her down and tell her directly. They didn't have to. It spoke a lot to watch the Bulls' Freddie Parker get yanked out of that line, and Camilla was going to discover just how far those close to her husband were prepared to go in order to ensure that her lineage was permanently excluded. Prince William and Catherine were the names of the individuals. You must comprehend these two's complete thinking toward the future of this kingdom in order to comprehend why they held the line so firmly. Prince William and Catherine appeared to the general public to be a contemporary royal couple. Warm, relatable, and endearing. However, those close to them claimed that their true strategy was much more well thought out than anyone could have imagined. Prince William adhered to one guideline and never deviated from it since assuming a senior royal position: to defend the lineage. To be honest, this had nothing to do with royal haughtiness or pride. His goal was to end the uncertainty before it began. Who was considered royal and who wasn't? Prince William realized something fundamental according to an insider. The public's perception of the border must be clear and unambiguous for the monarchy to endure. Blood is important, and titles must demonstrate that blood is important. And that's precisely where the silent conflict with Camilla started. Camilla desired a hybrid family tree in which her civilian children and her Parker Bowles grandchildren were eventually integrated into the royal lineage. The exact opposite was what Prince William and Catherine desired. A title is only awarded to direct Windsor ancestry. As the future monarch, Prince William desired a smaller monarchy, fewer working royals, more defined tasks, and no accolades given out simply because someone married into the family. This is where it became nearly embarrassing when Camilla began suggesting titles for her grandchildren. She didn't even quarrel with Prince William. He fell silent, and there was no uncertainty in that silence. It wasn't prudence, it was computed, and he did it for a very good cause. Camilla had already achieved a minor triumph years before. At a state event, she was able to increase the visibility of Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles. And after she won, what did she do? Within weeks, she allegedly gave the information to a friendly royal reporter, portraying it all in public as evidence that the family was at last accepting her kids. The palace was caught off guard. In order to walk the entire thing back, they had to quickly draft an emergency statement. That mess is something Prince William will never forget. It demonstrated to him exactly what would occur if he gave Camilla even a small amount of Freddie Parker Bowles. Please, it wouldn't remain private. Within a month, it would be splattered all over the newspaper, presented as advancement, and then pulled back out to serve as justification for her next demand. He didn't even say no this time. There was complete quiet, because even answering her would have given her something to cling to. Furthermore, Catherine wasn't merely sitting in silence and feeling uneasy about it all. No, she became directly involved. Catherine personally intervened when the palace was selecting pictures for the yearly Christmas card and requested that Freddie Parker Bowles be edited out of the final image. His look sitting next to Prince George, Charlotte, and Louis would have subtly suggested a position he just did not have, not because of who he was as a person. According to reports, she informed an assistant that she wasn't going to let one picture ruin years of meticulous effort, determining precisely who qualified as a legitimate working royal. Then Camilla realized how far she had fallen. She asked Prince William for a private one-on-one meeting immediately following Charles's coronation. Consider that. She never even needed to beg Charles for this, because Charles was always the first to seek her out. However, her encounter was set for 3 weeks in advance by Prince William's staff. As if that weren't embarrassing enough, they then discreetly incorporated it into a group briefing with other senior employees. She never once received her private audience. It struck her at that very time. She no longer had any unique access. Camilla persisted in her efforts for years. She continued to encounter pushback for years until she eventually stopped receiving it altogether. Nothing was being given to her. Prince William never had to make his argument aloud, according to a former assistant. He just let the silence speak for him. Catherine, too, had a purpose for maintaining her composure. And once more, it wasn't a personal distaste. Optics was involved. Giving official honors to step-grandchildren would have screamed partiality in a world where every royal decision is scrutinized online. Favoritism is precisely the kind of PR catastrophe that the palace did not require. Therefore, it wasn't merely an announcement when Prince George was ultimately granted the ceremonial title that is only given to future kings, a title Camilla had spent years praying would somehow fall to Freddie Parker Bowles. Oh no, this was the solution. Public, noisy, and untwistable. It made clear to everyone who will inherit the throne in the future. Not the Parker Bowles line, but the Windsors. According to staff, Prince William was aware of Camilla's exact reaction upon hearing the news, and he did nothing to deflect the blow. Not one. He felt that being brutally honest now was preferable to continuing to give her false hope for another year. It was best expressed by a person close to the family. William the Prince was not harsh. He was just not sentimental, particularly when it came to defending the monarchy. Camilla sobbed as she sat inside the royal home, as the outside world rejoiced at Prince George's assumption of his new position. And Prince George's title wasn't the only thing at stake. That was the most painful aspect. It was about her own grandchild being informed that he never had a chance without anyone having to speak to him directly. Prince William's stance was brutally obvious. Legacy above sentiment, blood over blended family, and the destiny of the monarchy would never be shared. Charles was caught between the lady he loved and the boy who would eventually replace him in the middle of this whole mess. After years of royal turmoil, Charles is portrayed in the public eye as the composed one, the steady hand, and the one keeping everything together. In private, though he was about to make a decision that revealed something much deeper, Charles may still hold the throne, but Prince William is in charge of the future, as demonstrated by this decision. It seems that the Parker Bowles family has no place in that future. But here's the deal. Camilla relied on Charles to support her family for many years. She never barged into a room and made a direct demand. No, she gently voiced her hopes that Freddie Parker Bowles would one day receive a title, a formal acknowledgement that her grandchildren are a part of this family. Charles, ever the diplomat, was always prepared with the ideal little response. "We'll locate the appropriate time." He repeated that to her several times before the real time came. Freddie Parker Bowles would ultimately decide whether or not to receive that ceremonial title. Charles found himself at a harsh crossroads all of a sudden. Give the title to his own heir and totally destroy his wife, or give it to Freddie Parker Bowles and run the possibility of a full-scale conflict with Prince William. Charles ultimately decided to take the throne because, to be honest, he usually does when it comes down to it. However, sources claim that he first hesitated. He didn't simply turn over right away. According to reports, Charles offered a genuine compromise, and this wasn't just some ambiguous gesture meant to silence Camilla. He proposed bringing back a long-dormant appellation that had been used for a distant relative who was never even eligible for the crown. It has no revenue, no succession claim, no land tied to it. Nothing. Freddie Parker Bowles would not even have to deal with the peerage system in order to carry a royal-sounding manor at formal functions. In order for Prince William to say yes without giving up anything that truly mattered, Charles essentially manufactured the thing. In any case, Prince William declined. He believed that if he let it happen even once, it may subtly damage the royal bloodline's reputation for generations. And Charles, who had fought to maintain the stability of this contemporary monarchy for his whole reign, ultimately gave in. This is the real moment it occurred. Charles summoned his confidential secretary and instructed him to write the proclamation designating Prince George as the recipient of the ceremonial title, which Camilla had long hoped would belong to Freddie Parker Bowles. Then, without being asked, he added one additional directive, ensured that the briefing materials never contained Freddie Parker Bowles' name or any reference to an other title. None of this was disclosed to Camilla. She had no idea that there was a draft. Charles really didn't want to battle his son according to a palace insider. He realized that if he disobeyed Prince William, his own family would go to war. Father against son, monarch against future king. Charles was unwilling to make the decision when it finally came to him. Now the actual event was meant to be modest. It appeared to the general public to be a beautiful small window into Prince George's future. During a difficult period, the palace saw it as a clear PR victory. But that was heartbreaking to Camilla. This is the part that made the entire situation nearly unbearably embarrassing. She received no warning after decades of devoted service to this family. Decades of being silent, and decades of abiding by their standards. Yes, in the same manner as everyone else, she learned about it through the official press release. According to an insider, Camilla just froze when she saw Prince George's name in the announcement. It appeared completely normal to everyone seeing from the outside. Prince George understood, of course. He will rule as king in the future. However, Camilla saw that one announcement as confirmation of everything she had been secretly worrying about for months. Her family would always be her top priority. Always. The perfectly poised Camilla that everyone had been watching for decades finally vanished that evening behind closed doors at Clarence's house. She completely collapsed. An eyewitness claimed to have exclaimed, "They have erased us," while holding the printed notification, They have deleted us after all of this. And this was no longer only melancholy. This was anger, betrayal, and a grief so profound that it seemed not even the crown she had battled so hard to obtain could make up for it. The atmosphere in the palace that night was described by one courtier as strained and almost bizarre. It was palpable every place. The courtier remarked, "You could hear it in the silence." According to reports, Charles attempted to reassure her by giving her gentle, well-rehearsed explanations about custom public expectations, royal strategy, and all the typical palace jargon used when someone has already made a choice and needs your acceptance. Camilla, however, would have none of it. Overcome, she turned to face her husband and told him directly, "You let them humiliate me." At that point, everything got even more repulsive, because all of a sudden Prince William was no longer betraying anyone. She had never received any promises from Prince William. Her own spouse had betrayed her in this way. This seemed like a knife coming from the one person who was meant to shield a woman who had supported Charles through decades of scrutiny, media attacks, and outright rejection from his own family. Beside him, she had made it through all of it, and this is what she received when she finally needed him to stand by her side. According to reports, she confronted him directly. "Did you even try to Diwakoi?" According to reports, Charles expressed regret, but he didn't apologize. And the difference is enormous. He sincerely thought he had made the correct decision for the crown, the institution, and history itself. Maybe fantastic for history. For the woman sitting in front of him who was utterly devastated by it, it wasn't so great, because the emotional harm was already done, regardless of his rationale. Camilla canceled a number of engagements in the days following the revelation, formally citing health issues. However, employees saw the change in her practically right away. Silent, far away, and freezing. And here's a small detail that in a way says more than any attention-grabbing title could. Camilla had personally chosen Charles's tie each morning for years. This little intimate ritual between the two of them was their thing. She came to a complete stop after the announcement. Instead, she gave his valet the task. No justification, no conversation. According to reports, Charles just once asked her why. She didn't respond to him. She just allowed that quiet to exist between them. Charles didn't press her on it, which was unusual, because he knew exactly what he had done in his heart. For the first time since their marriage, Camilla no longer felt secure in the company of a man who had once risked all to be with her. According to others, close to the family, this choice was likely to make a lasting mark. Not some political stain that the palace might cover up with a witty remark either. For decades, Camilla had walked a tightrope, gaining respect, remaining silent, and working for a family that had previously wanted nothing to do with her. To get there, she had to endure years of media abuse and public hostility. However, she was suddenly forced to confront something unpleasant after all that effort and years of self-proving. Perhaps she was the only one who had ever received all of that acceptance. The crown had always meant one thing to Camilla: evidence that her history no longer defined her, evidence that she had survived at last. But now that her own grandson had died, and her legacy had been subtly disregarded, she was faced with a harsh issue that she most likely never anticipated having to confront after ascending to the throne. Did she ever truly fit in there? As the emotional rubble began to settle, royal insiders turned their attention to the true significance of this title, snub. Not only for Camilla, but for the monarchy as a whole. Because this is the problem. Beyond those royal walls, something much larger was subtly taking shape. While everyone outside was preoccupied with Camilla's tears and Prince George's glittering new title, there is a significant generational gap. The future, a slimmer, sharper Windsor home, stood on one side. Prince William, Catherine, and their offspring were being meticulously shaped into a cohesive contemporary royal core. that was based only on custom lucidity and public appeal. Conversely, the Parker Bowles family, which insiders now referred to as a blended branch, was on the other side. Devoted, present, and constantly present, but totally unofficial. Locked out of the protocol welcome in the pictures, the family tree on Camilla's side wasn't precisely trimmed. It would almost need to be acknowledged at first. It was just disregarded. And that kind of disregard might sow the seeds for something far worse later on. You're witnessing the real-time disintegration of two royal visions, as one royal historian put it. Camilla desired a legacy that encompassed her entire family. Prince William is constructing one that eliminates everything except pure ancestry. And this is the issue. They both firmly believe they are correct. And there are significant ramifications here. This is more than a hot family drama that fades after a few negative headlines. This monarchy may eventually fall apart due to a long, quiet fracture that runs directly through the family's identity rather than an explosive scandal or a resignation. Both Freddie Parker Bowles and his family members are no longer little children. Despite not having a single royal title, they are growing up inside royal walls. Consider how bizarre that is. They travel the same palace halls as everyone else, yet you won't find their names in any official royal registry. They join Prince George, Charlotte, and Louis in celebrating each holiday. They share meals. Together they pose. They are raised near the same palaces. Beneath all that familial love, however, is a brutally obvious message. In reality, this planet was never intended for them. It seems that the place cards at a family Christmas at Sandringham revealed the entire unpleasant tale before anyone spoke. There was no sign of Freddie Parker Bowles at the main table. He had been seated away from the dining room, but close enough to view it in a different anteroom with distant cousins and staff kids. Freddie Parker Bowles was at last old enough to comprehend the significance of the seating arrangement that year. He turned to Laura Lopez, his mother, and asked her directly why he wasn't seated with Prince George. What exactly was she meant to tell him anyway? She had no response. What does this genuinely mean for the next generation? Then in essence, it refers to a monarchy that is becoming more and more based on hierarchy. Not simply a hierarchy of power, but a far more intimate hierarchy of who truly belongs. In the meantime, Prince George is already taking on responsibilities that strongly suggest his future. The majority of people are unaware of honors, military patronages, and discreet introductions into diplomatic circles. He is no longer only being brought up as a grandson. He's getting ready for something with each tiny step. The future grandchildren of King and Camilla are trapped on the brink of public recognition. There were no accolades, no references, and not even a hint of ceremonial participation. When it comes to family get-togethers, Christmas meals and photos, they are entirely part of the Queen's universe. However, they are mysteriously absent when it comes to the real future of the monarchy. Some now contend that this division is vitally essential. If the monarchy is to endure in the modern world, it must reduce its size, eliminate excess draw, clearer boundaries, and maintain manageability. All right. However, some caution that subtly pushing step relatives to the periphery like this could result in the kind of slow-burning animosity that eventually becomes more repulsive. What happens, as one insider put it frankly, when Freddie Parker Bowles continues to watch Prince George receive one distinction after another, while knowing that his own name was once being considered for something similar. They're not children forever, and feelings don't magically vanish just because the palace determines no one is permitted to discuss them, a former royal press officer noted. However, Prince William's strategy is obviously effective for the time being. The public adores his offspring, and let's be honest, selling the idea of a single untainted royal lineage is really effective. However, palace insiders caution that there is an emotional cost associated with all this lovely clarity, and eventually, someone must pay it, especially those who continue to fall behind. Camilla is experiencing that agony right now. It may take years for her grandchildren to completely comprehend the decisions made for them. In any case, the boundary has already been established, and it transcends titles and rituals. It cuts right through generations and into hearts. The future of the monarchy will be wholly focused on Windsor. That debate is essentially ended. The true question that remains is the true cost of that level of purity. And the solution can be as straightforward as a permanently split family. Because in all honesty, Camilla never saw the crown as merely a means of achieving personal glory. It was atonement. The crown was evidence that she had finally survived years of being ridiculed in public, discussed behind private doors, and held accountable for one of the most infamous love triangles in royal history. She battled valiantly to gain a position at the center of this kingdom, and in the end, she succeeded. However, it seems that she had no idea that the same organization that she had fought her way into for years would eventually turn on her own family and silently close the door. Camilla had sincerely hoped that what she had given up would help her grandkids. She thought that perhaps she could pave the way for her own lineage as well, if she managed to hold the throne gracefully through decades of strife, humiliation, and public animosity. Never equality with the Windsors. She wasn't requesting that Freddie Parker Bowles abruptly take an equal position next to the heir apparent. She desired something far more modest, some symbolic respect, some acknowledgement that her family had a place in this brand new contemporary royal court. She was met with silence instead. After that, she was rejected outright. Prince George's ceremonial title was no longer merely a pointless formality. It turned into a proclamation that solidified the monarchy's unwavering preference for ancestry over kinship. Camilla's years of silent optimism behind those palace walls were dashed with that one choice. Yes, her place is safe today. Her crown is not being taken away by anyone. However, there is a very embarrassing catch to that security. She is totally alone. She will continue to stand next to Charles at all formal occasions. For the cameras, she will smile. From the balcony, she will wave. She will have a queen-like appearance. Underneath it all, though, she will understand that her legacy with this institution ends with her. The name Parker Bowles will never be recorded in the annals of royalty. In a ceremony, her grandson will never bow. There will never be a major announcement about him. Not even a title that she would have happily divided with the Windsors herself will ever be a burden for him. And she bears that suffering all by herself. Because Prince William and Catherine shaped the throne, even though Camilla may hold the crown in this new period of royalty. One thing has become brutally evident as a result of their monarchy. Blended families' sentimental exceptions, or unique small favors, because the Queen just so happens to desire one, are completely out of the question. Camilla envisioned a legacy. Rather, she was left with one harsh reality. Her family was never royal, even though she is Queen.